Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wayfarer podcast, episode 12. We got the whole cast here today, starting with
Jonathan,
Katya,
Zach,
Riley,
and I'm Jared. Welcome back, everybody. Man, we've been on a journey the last couple of months. Excited to be here. I figured we'd start this episode off with our toast. We hadn't done that in a little bit.
That's a good idea.
That's good.
You know,
did a last episode. Yeah.
All right.
what is
never
it?
alone. Walk on.
Walk on.
Come on.
There you go.
Cheers.
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 To
Toasting is
episode
good.
12. Toasting's really good. I feel like it's a little bit of a lost art, you know, knowing toast I just have from the hip to shoot. I only have one.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Do
good.
we want to hear
Do it.
It's pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I hate to
Let's
give it
hear
a
it.
blow up my spot, but friends are like ships.
Hmm.
I'm blanking on it right now.
That was it.
Friends are like ships. All right, moving on. No.
Great toast.
Some ships are wood ships, but those ships may sink. The best ships are friendships. Into those ships we drink.
Aw.
Come on.
Cheers, brother.
That was
Cheers.
cute.
Cheers.
Well,
It
now I have
just
to do it
brings you
again.
down. Come on,
Cheers.
brother.
Cheers,
It's awesome.
brother.
Cheers.
What's up, brother? So we have been on a journey.
It's like, no.
We've been on a journey the last couple of episodes, you know, going through the kind of the vision in journey of, you know, nurturing and transforming our walk with Christ, which I think is a very fascinating one to get to be on. And it kind of leads us to this next conversation of, you know, what does that transformation really bring us to, which I think is kind of the turning from the internal change to the external change. And it's interesting as we kind of go along this journey, that kind of, you know, seeing love in a different way, and that maturing of love like brings us kind of to a new place of looking at the world and, you know, what it is and how there's good in the world, there's bad in the world, there's broken in the world. I mean, it's all over the place. It's a very complex thing where we really like it to be like Disney movies, really black and white, but that's not really the case, is it, Jonathan?
No, it's not.
Boom. Tell me more. No, just kidding. What do you guys think about that? The world, I mean, as we're coming to really this new love that we have, a kind of mature love, we'll call it, and embracing with the world. When you guys have gone through that journey, what does that look like as far as that change and shift?
Yeah, I feel like it can just be uncomfortable. And right now I'm like studying for the standardized test. And something that's so comforting about it is that like there's 4 answers. 3 of them are completely wrong and 1 of them is completely right. And so to be living in such a black and white world for an hour with my tutor, it's honestly so comforting. And then when I get out of that tutoring session, I get into gray zone, like society. And it's confusing because it's not always black and white like that. You're not going to have someone who's completely wrong for you, like a completely bad person.
I'm the example for that. Completely
or have
bad
someone
person.
that's a completely great person. So it's like there's so much gray zone that can be very confusing at times, and honestly has gotten me into a lot of trouble in the past because it's like you can look at someone and see so much good, but then there's also like the broken that like goes over the good. I don't see gray zone, and that's where things get confusing. So I'd like to say my answer to your question is confusing.
Confusing. One answer on the board.
Next.
Next. No, I think that's very accurate. And Gray Zone kind of sounds like a lame superhero, to be honest.
Gray Zone.
Like Frozone from The Incredibles.
Where's my super suit?
That was a pretty good
That
impression.
was
I'm not
actually
gonna
pretty
lie.
good, yeah.
You do it again.
Where's my super suit?
I don't know what I'm doing.
I love it. I love it.
Cut
Super suits. You know, mature love is kind of like having a super suit. It changes the way you engage in the world.
That was so
What
good.
an alley oop. Let's go.
John, save us.
Vision up, vision in, vision out. So we're vision up. The more we look to him, the more we look like him, the more we begin to look with him. So yeah, I think that's, I remember like wanting that. I still want it, but it doesn't, you can't fake it. It's very obvious. Like there has to be a true transformation, but it does start with the desire for it. And then I don't know. I think the problem that I run into with it is it's so hard not to be selfish when you're trafficking through the world and there's an opportunity and you have an opportunity to gain for yourself versus someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to deny that for yourself and want that good for someone else. And hopefully you can find an opportunity for, everyone to get better, to get a new opportunity. But oftentimes you have to limit yourself and say, no, you take this. This would be better for you. And like the love seeks the highest good of the other. That's something that I have to run through my head before I make a decision. Especially when you've been given authority and you have people that you're responsible for, and you want to hold on to that. You have to say, no, it's for you. It's selfless.
Yeah, it's gonna be so hard because it's like the transformation of, this mature love that we're talking about. It's not a flip switch. It's not like, oh, we've done the vision and now we're mature and we see the world rightly. I think it can be so difficult, like that process of becoming more and more mature in that is like thousands of those little decisions of like just thinking of the other person and wanting the best for them. Like that's such a challenging like step in that. And I can think of 1,000 times when I'm just like, well, screw this person. Like I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Especially when it seems like everybody else is looking out for themselves. You're like, why should I not
that's
look out for myself?
the way the world works.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very easy to fall into that mindset. And that's kind of what the world takes to an extent is like, go take what's yours because no one's going to give
That's
you anything.
That's what we were taught. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's bad. It's like, I think it's something where you guys are talking about, okay, yeah, we can all think like inward and say we're going to treat everyone with love, but then you go to work and maybe everyone else's mindset is not like that. And then like behind closed doors, everyone's making fun of this coworker that we work with, or you're at school and your friend group is excluding one person, and it's hard to, and then you don't want to seem like the weird person who's like, let's just love them. Like, it's so hard to execute that in a real world situation, like what you guys are all saying.
Yeah, and it's almost like you want to be like a Jedi with it, where it's like it's very smooth. It's not like this like robotic, like, guys, we should be nice to everybody. Because it's like that also like doesn't come across as authentic. That's not really like... it's like there's ways to like say that and go about mature love in a way that isn't like, well, guys, I would never make fun of somebody, like I'm so above that. It can be very difficult to like actually engage. And like, I'm so guilty of that, of like having a good time reading the Bible and then going off in the world like, man, I'm the best Christian ever. Like I mature love and these guys are sinners and stink. And it's like, man, the reality of that is like, oh, like you go back to the vision end of like understanding that like we're broken, that we have to surrender that, before we can really continue to be transformed into having that mature love and embracing and noticing the world and how it is.
I think that's why, like, you look at the world today and it's like the world has definitely lost the view of mature love. And I think that's why we say mature love needs to start with good, like if you don't start with the good and you're just, oh, wow, the world, man, everybody sucks. Everybody's out for themselves, like that's so discouraging compared to if you were to start with the good, like, man, like I love you guys. Like I care about you guys so much. And like, just like every day, just texting you guys and the conversation, like that's a good thing for like to me. And like, I consider that like a love of our friendship. And like starting with that is like way better compared to being like, man, you guys never talk to me. You guys suck. This is not real love.
You say that sometimes, but
I definitely say it more.
Well,
but
even like on a bigger microscope, like our own lives. Like, I mean, we've recently challenged each other to like say nice things about ourselves when we say negative things. And like, that can be so challenging. Like when you're in that mode of like, I suck. I'm the worst. Like I'm awful. It's like, it's so easy to be stuck in that. And then you're like, all right, say 3 nice things about yourself. And you're like, I can't even think of 3 nice things about myself. And it's like, whoa, it's like how challenging that, like, it's in our bones that we feel.
Jared literally challenged me with that today, and I like had a hard time doing it.
It is challenging, but I've had the same time when people challenge me, and it's like, it's difficult when you're spiraling, when you're thinking about how hard and broken the world is. And that's why, focusing on noticing the good is so important, because that is a hard thing to do on a micro level and even on a macro level. It can easily get lost in translation and just think of how bad everything is. Like that's not a hard take nowadays, is to be like everything's kind of bad and like it's kind of rough. That is a very easy, most people would be like, yeah, absolutely, the world's falling apart, you know.
Completely. I had this conversation with my sisters the other day. We were talking about like people they know that they're in like relationships, and like they're like, yes, person one was just talking for 45 minutes just about how like toxic their relationship was, but then they're with this other guy, and then it was just a whole thing, and then person two spent 45 minutes too talking about their relationships, and it was just so much I don't know another word to say it than drama. Like it was just a lot of drama, but like they just keep egging it on, and it's like it's just not good. And then it's like if you take away all those layers of drama and like the I'm not talking to you because you didn't talk to me, and I'm gonna cheat on you because you cheat on me, and you take out all those layers, it's like, what do you just want in life? Like, do you want the drama, or do you want like a mature and good love that's always going to look out for you? And just like the other day I do my hot girl walks, and so this is I was like, do you guys know that term?
No.
Okay.
I know.
We certainly don't.
What is pretty.
So it's like
Zach, you don't go on hot girl walks?
I have not
bet
you
yet.
probably do and don't know it's called
you do
a hot
and
girl
you don't
walk.
know.
Explain this, because I have to.
So it's like a recent thing where like people go on nice walks during sunset, and so girls have put a term to it. So like, because you get cute outfits like athleisure, and then you put your hair back and like you look cute, and so girls have termed it a hot girl walk, and so you could just go walk. So you probably do it too, Zach.
Okay.
You have to qualify, and you qualify.
Even if you go walk to coffee, that's a hot girl walk to coffee.
Okay. All right.
So anyway, on my hot girl walks, I've tried to take one every single afternoon recently because it's really good for your mental health. And so on my hot girl walk, I was like, it's with love and with dating and with friendships, like I feel like in the past, it wasn't that I thrived off of drama, but it's almost like I almost felt like it was necessary. Like watching movies, you see this like dramatic embrace, and you see, oh my gosh, they moved across the nation and then they came back, and then there's so much drama, and you're just like, I need that in my life. And this is all the stuff I focused on. And so then when you encounter a relationship that's just good and mature and beautiful, there's none of that like movie magic, as you will. And so on my walk, I was thinking, I'm like, are some of my relationships that are good wrong? Because it's like they don't match with what everyone else is talking about. Like it's not this like dramatic big exchange, and it just feels really good, and that's it. And it's like as simple as that. And I think we kind of talked about that last week or last episode, where we're like, is it good or is it bad? And it's just like a mature love. Sometimes, do you guys think that sometimes it could feel bad? Because it's like we're seeing the broken and the not broken. So it's like sometimes when you're dealing with the broken, could you look at that and be like, I think something a lot of people talk about is like, this is toxic because it's bringing down my mental health. So it's like, do you know what I'm saying?
I think it can be unnatural for us. You know, I think sometimes being loved well can feel very weird because we don't feel like we deserve it, or it's like it feels like we need to earn that kind of love. And so like truly like living out of mature love like can feel unnatural until we, you know, understand it and get used to it. And that's where, you know, noticing good and embracing good is so much of like mature love, because it's a crucial thing to know what love is and know the definition of it in order to truly receive it. But like I've been in situations where, I mean, someone will just be kind to you or like very like sweet and like support you, and you're like, I don't even deserve this kind of love. Even though it's really great and beautiful, it's like I can feel almost small because of like how great it feels, and like I don't deserve this.
I completely agree. Isn't that weird? That's happened to me so many times where someone's like giving me a compliment, like a genuine compliment about like the podcast or something in my life. And I'm like, oh, like I don't know how to react to this. But then if like you give me criticism, like immediately I'll be like, I promise I didn't try to do that. You know, exactly.
You're like, the podcast great. It's like, I don't believe you. And they're like, it kind of sucks. I go, I 100% I'm with you.
For some reason, whenever I think of like mature love, I think of like when you're out at dinner and like that friend picks up the bill and like your instinct is like to, most times, like if it's a really close friend, you're like, your instinct is to be like, no, let me pay. And you like go back and forth. Like we've even done that as a cast together, I think.
Oh.
Zach almost beat up a waitress.
Shouldn't have. It was too much.
No.
But like, that's like embracing that, like being like, don't like try to fight over the bill. Just like be present and thankful for that. Like that is mature love. Like being able to let that friend pick up the bill and not like be like, why are you doing this for me? Like that's like, just be like, man, that is so nice of you, and embrace that. Like that's what I think of mature love.
People struggle to receive blessings and the gifts. You can want to earn it. You want to do something for it. It's like, oh, you do something to me, I want to do it back. But it's like that posture to, one, love without expectation, and then also to receive love and know that you don't have to give back is like, I mean, that is deep level of like trying to wrap your mind around that kind of love, because it can be hard. It can be hard.
I agree.
So when we're thinking about, obviously going through this process, it's like a commingled world. When we're thinking about trying to notice and embrace, let's start with the good, because we think that is, the thing that's very underdone in this current world. How do you guys, start to try to build those habits of, whether it's a hot girl walk to think about all the good, or, other kind of rhythms in your life to, really notice the good? Because and especially in this world with social media and everything, it's like the bad is oftentimes the most highlighted and the most clicked upon. So how do we kind of try to go about our lives noticing the good?
For me, I think it's just been practicing stillness. And that's where the walks come in handy, because it's like I won't stop my walk until I've like come to some sort of peace of mind. And so sometimes like I walked like 5 miles the other day, and then like sometimes I'll walk 2. But it's like, it's just the point of understanding, like, let's just walk and not think about everything else that's going on. Like, let's just listen to this music and not think. And then through that course of not trying to force ideas from my own conscious, all of a sudden I think of, or I mean, yeah, I keep thinking, but it's like, I definitely think that there's a God intervention that happens at some point of the walk. Cause then all of a sudden, like, I'll see some beautiful, like, flower tree or something, or some beautiful, like, duck family, or I don't know, something like just nature that, like, I'm just like, wow, like, this is what life's about. Like, it's just about, like, the good, beautiful, like, piece of it. And it's not about the, like I said, drama. It's not about emphasizing it's like looking at yourself and saying, yes, there are broken parts of me, but there's also a lot of good in me, and there's a great future for that. And so I genuinely think that's like the synopsis of most of my hot girl walks.
I think the drama like causes like that distorted view that we've talked about like before this, like drama, there may be like some sort of part of that feels good. You're like, ooh, like talking about, like, sometimes talking about drama is like fun, but it's like, that's not mature love. That's like almost a distorted view, I would say. Like, and when you like are translating it into like modern language, like I feel like that's a version of what a distorted love looks like. And that's why we say like starting with that good is so important. I think the part where I struggle with in like mature love is that brokenness. It's like how can mature love be broken? Like, that's something I struggle with personally, like trying to understand as I've been like wrapping my head around this. And I mean, I'm curious what you guys, maybe Jonathan, I feel like you might have something good. Why are you laughing?
The question is, how can mature love be broken?
Yeah.
That's a valid question.
Or do you think that, like, or have you ever like thought of that at all?
I think it's recognizing the broken. So I remember a long time ago, or not, kind of long ago, I was talking to you, Zach, about humility, and you told me it wasn't about thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking more of others, and that with that, as you're interacting with people, and if you want to see them in a higher light, then you have to recognize they're broken and appreciate it and sort of understand your own brokenness as well. And then once you get past that, then you don't get stuck on that, because I feel like you can very easily get stuck on the broken, and then you discount them and say, I don't want to deal with their brokenness. But if you can recognize it and see it in yourself, then you can go on to see the future. I don't know if you have any examples of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the amazing thing first just about the conversation that we're all having is just, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking what a good conversation, because words require definition. And here we are talking about love. And you go, what does that even mean? I think back to last episode, like love is patient, love is kind, like it's not self-seeking, it's not proud, it's not easily angered, all these things that like there's definition to love. And the whole journey we've been on is this idea that God, like ultimate love, exists, a love that seeks our highest good, full stop, not instrumentalizing it, not needing it, not any, just for the sake of the joy of willing the good of the other. Mm-hmm. So first, just well done having a good conversation, because a recovery of a proper definition of love, you just said that, like we got to know what we're talking about so that we can say, oh, well, to see with the eyes of love, I have to really be honest of what does love see? Well, love does see the good first. And love is mature enough to see the broken, and reality is big enough to, our reality, our theology accounts for the fact that we're born into a moral tragedy. A friend shared that one line with me, and I was like, how brilliant is that? When I realized that we're born into a moral tragedy. You think if you were to watch a movie and you saw a cast of characters and their plane had crashed, and they were, wrecked. I think there's a show, Lost, right?
You're describing.
Yeah.
Society is snow.
Yeah. But if you think like that, we would not look at each other and start blaming each other for the cuts you have, or the scars you have, or the trauma you have. Like, if we saw it under the umbrella of a moral tragedy, we would see your brokenness and be like, oh, it makes sense, right? But we have totally, in the modern era, totally disregarded the idea of a sin, of a sin that breaks a creation and shatters it. It's a moral tragedy from the jump, right? And that's where Christian theology just nests us within a story that allows us to say, your brokenness, it's not that it's not your fault, right? There's culpability, there's responsibility, there's all these things that we're accountable for, and yet we are born into this moral tragedy. And so I can look at you and I see your story and I go, oh wow, there are layers of broken that were preceding you and that you're nested within and that we've all been touched by, and I share that. So it moves me to this place of empathy and compassion. So I can think of so many stories where it took me a second to put myself back in that frame of mind, where I encountered somebody who was hard to love or was different or was other to such a degree that at first I bristled and was like, I had all my reasons, right, for thinking low of them. And it takes a little bit before you catch yourself and you realize, like, every thought that I'm having about you is really me in an elevated position. We talk about Martin Buber's way of seeing people. He wrote a book called I, Thou, book recommendation, I, Thou. And he describes the way to see people. And the first and the lowest way is to see you as an it, like as an object, like I, it. And that way of relating to people is the most dehumanizing, right? And we've probably all experienced that at some level, being treated like an object. And it just it's not who we were made to be. Better than that is to see you as a you, right? I, you. It's better than I, it, but it still is like othering you. It's still me elevated, making a judgment about you. The I, thou relationship is to say there's dignity about who you are. You're made in the image of God. And we may be different, broken, you may be in the wrong about something. And yet there's that goodness about you can't be stripped away. So I have tons of stories. It's a way long, I didn't even answer the question you asked about a particular story. But I think it's good for us to understand that idea, that Christian theology, the story, the wayfaring journey, confesses we're walking a landscape where the story is we're born into a moral tragedy. That gives us the freedom to look with empathy at each other and go, I know, you too, right? C.S. Lewis, friendship is born anytime you say, oh, you too. to be able to look at you and say, yeah, you're broken, me too. And yet to not have that be the end. You mentioned it before, that there's a future and that there's a possible hope. So I could give you story after story, it's just even starting with my own life. But I think that having a context for the brokenness is what sets you free to be able to be truly, deeply empathetic and sit with somebody who, Lewis wrote a friend in Letters to Malcolm about what would it be to encounter Hitler? Would it be possible to see the humanity in that person, in somebody who we have just nothing but disgust reaction for? Could we ever see ourselves at the possibility where we could see a good in them and understand their brokenness? Right? Not dismiss it, not excuse it, not justify it, but see it in the context of a moral tragedy. And Lewis was saying, that's what it is to be with Jesus. That's what was so remarkable and disruptive about him. If he was sitting at this table, like a love that sees you and has no illusion that you're keeping something. Like they see your brokenness at the deepest level. And yet you look at them and they go, and you can sense they have nothing but seeing my highest good. So, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think on the flip side of that, like thinking about perfect love and brokenness, like I've, had times where I was in brokenness, and you have the way that people engage you can feel very belittling at times when it's like, yeah, it'll all be all right. Don't worry about it. You'll bounce back. Like when I was like unemployed for like 3 months, and it's like, you'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. And it's like, that might be true. That's not, false. That'll work out. That something will happen. But that feeling of just like, oh, it'll be okay, and not like leveling with me and being with me and like the hardness of
acknowledging it almost.
Yeah. It's like, well, you can like look at it and be like, that's fine. But to like actually like come with me and like be in that brokenness and feel that with me is like a whole entire different thing. And like, I remember it's like, the friends that would do that would sit with me and like really be in the hardness of that, it's just like it felt so much different, and like there was a alleviating. I mean, we talked about it before, that like a good friend doubles your joy and splits your sorrow. And I think in brokenness there's so much with that as well. And
can I stop right there and just jump in? Because for everybody listening for this is you said it doesn't, it's not just a light switch, right? That's why we're saying recovering a wayfaring posture that just says Jesus is inviting us to say, come follow me. Come follow me. And first of all, I'm going to reveal and show you what that love looks like. Number one. Second, I'm going to tell you all along the way that love has been birthed into you by a miracle, right? And you're nurturing something that is a gift, right? That's that whole vision and journey. And then as Jonathan said, it goes up to in to out, and we begin to look around and we're like, oh, I'm beginning to notice. The more I spend time with Jesus, the more I notice that he always turns toward the good and affirms it. I love that about what Riley was saying. If we wayfare with Jesus long enough, we're like, watch how he enters a room. He always sees the good, and there's an affirmation of the good, and right, he celebrates it in some way. He also acknowledges brokenness, and to acknowledge it, the true posture is to suffer with. To be compassionate is to suffer with. It's not to fix you. But imagine the incarnation, that God would take on flesh and participate in such a way to be able to say like, oh, I've felt that. I know what the rejection is. I know what that feels like. So I think you're making a great point that a good friend doubles our joy. Why? Because they celebrate the good. And so they double that joy. A good friend suffers with us. They join us in our suffering. Man, if we could say that we don't have capacity for celebration, which I think in our culture we've lost the ability. That's why we're saying the 8-to-1 ratio of positive affirmation to critical feedback is so necessary, because we just don't do it enough, right? To be like, great haircut, love that. We don't point that stuff out. It's not our natural disposition. So well done, by the way.
I did point out your haircut.
That's the first thing I told Jonathan today.
Because
we all nailed it.
You're wayfarers,
you guys are living it out.
But even celebrating the good, like, it's like funny how, going back to like the very personal, like I don't love my birthday because I like being like, I don't know what it is. I like being like I like being appreciated, not celebrated. So I like doing things to like get people to like love me than just like to celebrate Jared because it's Jared's birthday. Like that kind of attention, like I don't like it. Like it makes me uncomfortable, which is like funny that like I know other people feel that way too. And it's like, that's a very like hard thing just to like receive that love and to really receive it. Cause it's so often I can't do that like on my birthday when people are texting me and saying whatever, you're like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, I've almost thought about taking it off my Facebook because it's like, that's how much I just like, the people who know can text me, but like, I don't want to like make a big deal about it.
That would ruin my life because I am horrible with birthdays and I rely so hard on Facebook for the birthdays.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like, you wouldn't expect anybody who doesn't have you on Facebook to know your birthday. Like, that's just like the reality. It's tough to keep up with them, but yeah, that like brokenness that like we have, that like I have, that like I think other people like in the society have of like wanting to be appreciated, not celebrated, is like, I want to do things to earn love instead of just like receiving love, which I think is hard. It's hard to do that.
I think that's why having that commingled lens, that mature love has that strange and beautiful ability to see the commingled reality of things and say it's good and broken and there's a future. And we go, okay, I can understand that. I like that way of seeing the world. And you go, okay, first lesson then is turn around or look in the mirror and look right at that person and have the grace to say very good and broken and there's a future. That's a more I think you're right that's a more difficult lens when it's turned towards us.
It's so sure. It was when I challenged Riley to think of good things, I had 8 things I rattled off like as soon as you finished your 3 things that I like rattled off immediately that he hadn't even thought of. And it's like it's easy for us to see good in others like that can be very and it's like some people it's very easy for them to find good in themselves. They think very highly of themselves, but like that, I don't know why that's so difficult. And it's like, why celebrating that? Because it's I think that highly personal of that. I see my good, I see my broken, and it's like you hope that there's a future where it like works out, you know?
That's so true. I feel like now being a post-grad student, all my friends are kind of in the journey of finding their why, and they're just now new adults in the world, just trying to find their purpose. And like, I was having a conversation with my friend, and she's like, Kati, you have X, Y, and Z going for you. Like, what's going on? And I'm like, what are you talking about? You have X, Y, and Z going for you. And it's like, I feel like when we look at our friends, we see so much potential for the future. And we're like, just by being around you, you're like, you have all these traits that would be great for this job. And you would do this and that and the other. But then when it's time to do self-reflection, be like, but what's my, like in this situation, like, what is it that I love about myself? Or like, what are the broken parts? It's so hard to like self-reflect for some weird reason, right?
Well, we know our own deepest, darkest secrets and have lived through our faults, so it's you don't see that when you see other people, but you know it of yourself.
Yeah, there's a great program that went through schools for a while. I found it to be so helpful with students in high schools when they were doing it. But they said you would get with people and say, "If you really knew me, you would know." Mm-hmm. And what came out of those conversations? My goodness, you think about being with 10 or 12 other people in a high school setting, people that you've judged, you've looked down at, you've been skeptical of, and then you're sitting in a circle and somebody says, if you really knew me, you'd know that I don't have a home. If you really knew me, you'd know that I was physically abused from the time I was 4 years old, right? These are the kind of stories that come out and you're like, oh, well, your earring doesn't really matter, or your purple hair, like, I get it. Like this, like just immediately you saw this transformation, like if you really knew me. And I think, Jonathan, you're right. Like we look at ourselves and somebody says, well, hey, good on you. Happy birthday, right? And in the back of our mind, we see those broken parts of ourselves and you say, if you really knew me, you'd know, right? That you wouldn't be saying happy birthday if you really knew me. And that part of ourselves is so amplified in our own head, and we're kind of imprisoned by that. And so I think it's right that we know those parts of us. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the reality of being in relationship with a God who is love, who sees in this way, who goes, I see that, right? It's not, I do really know you. That's not hidden from me. And as much as I see that, it doesn't diminish the good. And that takes us a while to get. We're not used to that. We are used to people who see the broken and they have a disgust reaction. Their immediate thing is to pull back and recoil from us. We're not used to the other, which is why I think this is such a good conversation, because how do we get to the point where we're able to reflect honestly about ourselves and not be so imprisoned by our brokenness? Well, what if we were around people who we were much more, first of all, they've celebrated so much of the good that we actually start to be like, oh, wow, that's seen, right? And they don't turn a blind eye to the brokenness. And you get comfortable, like, hey, they don't back away from my broken. They know it. If you really knew me, you'd know. And that's what was phenomenal about this program. People realize that actually, when you really know me, you move towards me, not away from me, right? And my whole life, I've thought you will move away from me. And I think that's the great diabolical lie. It certainly is in our country, right? Right now, this polarized moment where everybody's like, we're to a point where people, serious, heavyweight journalists are saying we're at a point where we truly do hate each other. And you have people like Bill Maher coming out and saying, like, we have got to get back to a place where we can look at each other and say, I rigorously disagree with you. In fact, I think you are dead wrong on fundamental things, but I don't hate you. And I'm able to look at you and I see good. I see you made. But this is part of why we said Nietzsche, when we wipe the horizon and everyone is falling forward, backward, sideward in all directions, we're not wayfaring. There's no story. We're not nested within a moral tragedy, but yet with future and hope and purpose. When you take all that away, then you really do have survival of the fittest. And I have to compete with you. I have to hide my weakness. I have to diminish the brokenness so I can get my advantage, because we just can't relax or rest. So I think this is all a part of that bigger conversation, but I can see it and feel it even now when we're talking about if you really knew me, right?
It can be so hard. And some of the most like liberating and freeing conversations is those like deep, dark secrets that you're just like, I just know when this gets out, like this is going to be like heavy. And it's like, I've had the very fortunate experience of not having a ton of negative experiences like that, where so many of my friends have like just like embraced me and like loved me through those like heavy moments in a way that you just never would expect. You would just expect it all to go wrong, that they're going to hate you, not even want to like talk to you anymore. And it's like the love and like the leaning into that. It's like, that is like a huge thing that we just need. And I think why the Bible is so big on community and leaning on one another and loving one another, because we do need that. And I think that can be like a huge domino, like you're saying, like that leads into us, really starting to understand and see ourselves more rightly than how we can fall into by ourselves.
Can I make 2 quick points? One is what you just described, that is mature love. And I want everybody listening to know, like, I know that you have and I have not felt that, right? People have seen the ugly part of us, the broken part of us, and they have weaponized it. They've turned around and leveraged that. That has happened. And that is not mature love. Mature love does not do that. Mature love sees the broken and suffers with it, acknowledges it, and be like, I see that, right? So I want everybody to know, like, we know that pain. We've felt that pain. We've experienced that pain. That is immature love, infant love in its infancy, love still at the very center, needing so much and competing. So that's not what's being described. And all of us have felt that other. What we're advocating for is a mature love that sees the broken and suffers with it. That's that first thing. Second thing is we start to realize just why we're nested within a relational context for flourishing, which is how this started out, is that flourishing, true flourishing, is relational. There's something that takes place, because the other thing that happens is when I hear Jonathan open up and share that dark brokenness and I rise to love, I am changed. There's I experience more of who I was made to be, because I was made to react in a way, to respond in a way where love rises to the occasion to will the good of the other. And when Jonathan experiences that, that's a good for him. But that's also what enlarges and widens my life. I become more of who I was made to be as a creature made in the image of love. And so that's you kind of, we rob each other of that. When you don't give me the opportunity to love you through your brokenness, then I stay small. But when you're willing to like trust me and open up and show me that part of you, then I can let love rise to that occasion, and I am enlarged and I become more of who I was made to be. But when we're all hiding those other parts of us, we stay small.
I agree. A question that comes into my brain is, because what I was mentioning before, it's like you can be with someone who only embraces their brokenness and you're constantly bringing the good. You're like, no, but you're so much more than that, blah, blah, blah. To a point, like, do you think it gets like toxic to your own state of mind? Just because I think with everything there can be extents to everything. And so I guess my question is, when do you know when that's the circumstance where, okay, Jared, I'm going to sit with you and we're going to look at your brokenness, but we're also looking at your good, and like you're reciprocating that. But like, if he's not reciprocating that for like, I don't like, if he's just not reciprocating that, like, how do you know how to love them maturely, but also not let your boat sink? Because I think I see that with a lot of people. I'm just like, it's realistic. I have so many like situations where I look at like friends and I'm like, this person you're hanging out with is totally changing you. And like I know you're there for a good reason, but it's like, you don't need to be in that situation. No. So I think that's very realistic.
Well, no, I feel like I've been that guy before, where I've gone through months of just feeling like in a low and like feeling like downtrodden, where it's like nobody can say anything to me to like lift my spirit because I feel just like broken about where life is at. So it's very realistic.
Yeah.
I think like that happens, and like that's hard because it's like, how do you balance that? Because you obviously want to love them like through that circumstance, and like there was people trying to love me through those circumstances, but it's like the brokenness I think comes a lot from, you know, a disconnection from God, because it's like if you're not tying to the source, like that can be really broken for that particular person. But how do you from the outside engage with that? I mean, it's really hard.
Yeah. I think keeping that proper definition of love wills the good of the other. So as a friend, that's my posture, right? Love wills the good of the other. So I hear your brokenness and I don't affirm it. I affirm the good. Mm-hmm. I acknowledge the broken. And that's a very big distinction. I'm not affirming the brokenness. The brokenness is brokenness, right? So when I show you that brokenness as my friend who loves me and wills my good, the highest good, if you can imagine that being a bucket, like my container, and your ability to pour in that good and encourage me and fill me up, right? If you start to notice, like, it doesn't, no matter how much I do that, it does not seem to fill that reservoir, right? Mm-hmm. Then willing my good is to see that thing made whole so that that reservoir can fill, right? And that's where we start to go like, oh, willing your good looks like meeting you and suffering with the broken, but willing your good, love also participates in the future. And so that's where I get to be with you in your brokenness, and I acknowledge it. Like, I see your pain, I feel your pain. Riley and I just had a great conversation today with Dr. Dugdale, who's a phenomenal physician who wrote a book called The Lost Art of Dying. And yeah, there you go. That's a great book recommendation. Read that book. That everybody should read that book. But The Lost Art of Dying. And she said that she was talking about the Jewish community and their grieving process. And she said they give a year in the grieving process for that most intense grief, right? Grief has its own time. But the Jewish community, she said, does a really good job of marking that time with a year of permission to be in intense grieving. And then there's a community expectation that after a year, we're going to start working to return back to being able to continue living into a full life that doesn't discount grieving, but they mark that period of time. And so I think love willing the good of the other, there is a time where we say, I acknowledge that brokenness and I see it, and I want to participate in the future. And so as your friend, that means immediately, whether they know it or not, I'm praying for that wholeness to come. And then I'm looking for ways that I can contribute to their wholeness and healing, knowing that I can't do that. Probably, likely, it's not my job. I can't get into that space, but I see that. And to your point, in that process, willing the good of the other looks like, in order to will your good, you might need more time seeing that healing and wholeness come, rather than just me continuing to try to pour into something that just highlights and evidences that you can't hold or contain that. I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, acknowledge the broken, be with me, suffer with me, and know that there is a way to participate in the future, and love does all three of those.
Yeah. It could be, it's so sobering. I'm just thinking about how we, notice it and embrace the future. It's like those two, the good and the broken, is like a very sobering way of living. And I think it can be easy if you let either one of those like overtake how you look towards the future for the hope. It can be, you can really just miss that life. If you're just the positive Polly who's happy-go-lucky all the time, it's like, well, that's not really living in life. And if you're too much on the dark of like, man, suffering, it's like brokenness in the world, it's like you're also not going to have a good outlook for the future. And it's like, it's interesting because you want to hope for the future, but like know that more brokenness is along the way that you're going to have to experience. And it's like, man, that's like, it's an interesting dynamic to like continue to try to hope through good and brokenness. It's like so hard to hold all that together, like in that mature love. And I think it's something that we're always trying to continue to grow in.
Yeah. I love, there's a scripture that says we're prisoners of hope. Like, I love it. Held captive by the idea that a dawn is coming. And to live in that posture is so beautiful. And I think, again, this comes right back to the fullness of life that says, oh, when I begin to look out and have this vision out that says it's commingled, I see the good and I know what to do with it. When I see good, I celebrate it. And that's the takeaway for this episode. Is like, can we learn to notice that? That's wayfaring. That's being with Jesus and looking and learning to notice the good. And when we see it, celebrate it. We don't ever miss a chance, because I may not get another chance to celebrate the good. Which, by the way, celebrating the good can be the smallest thing. We do it all the time. You think about the affirmation of a friend who sees something that no one else in a room saw, but they saw it, and they look at you and they just simply affirm it. They're just like, yeah, I saw that. That's good, right? Celebrate the good. Suffer with the broken. We move toward it, right? But participate in the future gets to be, one small stitch. We don't overestimate. We're going to heal everything, solve all the world's problems. That becomes unhealthy. But participating in the future says that even tonight, right? If I take your glasses and I gather them up, and I wash those things and I put them right so that they are ready for hospitality for the next time, I've participated in a future where more hospitality will come. There's a fullness of life. So learning to think small when it comes to participating in the future, there's this great, Julian of Norwich has this great quote that says, all shall be well and all shall be well. And to participate in the future is to be a prisoner of hope. This is someday, right? There will be nothing but glasses ready for good guests and hospitality for everyone.
In the world, I mean, that. It's like from Ted Lasso. It's like it's the hope that kills you. It is like what the team feels because they lose so frequently that they're like, you can't hope because the hope, it's ultimately going to let you down, and it's never going to work out the way that you want it to. And I feel like a lot of that's like, I mean, that's such an easy sentiment to get behind of like lower your expectations because life is going to be hard. My 7th grade science teacher used to say, life is hard and then you die. He also said I was going to be a used car salesman, so he wasn't right about everything.
It's not too late.
It's not too late.
I think, isn't that the beauty though, that like, there's another great story of a bishop in South Africa during apartheid that said, light says to the darkness, I beg to differ. It's what life does. It begs to differ with the darkness. And I think I get inspired by the long arc of the story that says all shall be well. But that day, that we're going to endure through the night. And enduring through the night means light a candle, right? Like light begs to differ with darkness. And so what can I do today? I can't worry about tomorrow. But today, as far as it's possible for me, I will participate in a future that is in alignment with what I know will one day be. No more tears, no more sorrow, no more war, no more strife. And so as far as it's possible for me, I will celebrate the good, I will suffer with the broken, and I will participate almost in protest of darkness and say, you do not get the last word. The last word will be a redemptive reconciliation and restoration of all things. That is the final note in the symphony. And I'm going to calibrate and tune my life to be an instrument towards that. I'm going to participate in that symphony in every way possible, in the smallest of ways. And in doing so, I will taste something of a life that I had not known previously.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And, I'm sure the listeners, they're all in different hours of the day. Some feel like they're in the thick of the night. Some feel it getting dark. And I'm sure there's some who, see the glory hour coming. And I just, feel for them. I can almost like get emotional just thinking about it. Like I know some people probably feel very hopeless right now. And it's like that to hope for a future feels like futile. You're like, it's never going to be light again. And just to know that it is, like there is a hope, I think is, I don't know, that's a lot.
Yeah. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. That is a truth, right? And so we have to acknowledge that. I think one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard about the dark night of the soul, those moments where it's like, I don't see it, right? And we talked about Augustine in the house of our soul is too small. The beautiful way of thinking about the dark night of the soul is that when the lights in the house get dark, it's only when the house lights are dark that I can see through the window and notice that there's one star. And you think right now, it's dark recording this episode. If all the lights in the house are on, and when the lights of the house are on, we can't see something beyond us that's lit. But if all of these lights were to go out, it would take us a while. But after a while, enough time in there, we would turn around and we would notice one faint light in the distance. And sometimes that's the moment. And so I get it. I'm with you that it's to be in those long seasons of that. So difficult. It's trying. And the only thing that we can do is go, there is light. And we will never be without it. But we can acknowledge that right now it's very dim and it seems very distant. But we're not alone. We started with the toast, right? That's part of the wayfaring journey. This is a good broken future and never alone. We're walking on towards that.
Yeah.
Completely.
The journey that we're on, man. Just making our way around, huh? Man, we only have one more episode left of the season. That's crazy.
That is
insane.
crazy.
Wild.
Oh my
Crazy.
goodness.
Yeah.
And where is it taking us, Jared?
That's a good question. You'll have to tune in next week to find out. It's what the whole journey has been about, love. So I think that's what we're really going to end on, and we'll talk about it, how it all comes together, which will be a lot of fun. So anybody else have anything to say before we sign off?
No, I just love it that people are joining in and participating in the conversation. We keep saying it, but I would say the only thing I would add is give the email thing. I don't know. How do people reach out? Like
DM, I think.
DM us.
Is that it?
Yeah, I think people
Slide
DM.
in,
Write me a
everybody.
letter.
Write me a letter,
If
please.
you're watching,
Yes.
comment.
Yeah.
If you're on
Carry your fax number.
Instagram,
Put a
DM.
put a DM message. I think that
Yeah.
that's great because really by now, right? 12 episodes in, almost the last one of season 1.
Good job.
Our hope in setting this out was to start walking in the direction of our hope.
Right.
That's what we said at the outset. We're wayfaring. We're just people walking in the direction of our hope. And we're going to start walking in that way. And our hope was that a few people would be like, me too.
Right.
Me too.
Mhm.
Me too. So if maybe that's you, let us know, because I think that would be an encouragement as we start to think about season 2 and continuing the conversation, because I think that it's shaped all of us. I know that that's been true for me. So
Completely. And like on top of like the course of the podcast itself, I feel like just in relationship with you guys, like because we have gotten to know what love is and I think our faith is genuinely the baseline of it all. Like because of where we see eye to eye on this, like I've been able to grow so much in my own life just being friends with you guys.
it's awesome.
So thank you.
More to
Ditto.
come.
That's my final word of
Ditto.
the pod.
Well, thanks so much, everybody. Feel free to follow us on socials, do all the stuff, and we'll see you next time.
Never alone.
Adios.
Walk
Walk on.
on.